Hi everyone, welcome to Java Techie. In today's microservice world, many of you may have heard of event-driven architecture. This architecture allows one microservices to communicate with other in asynchronous manner, right? So if you consider below example, I have an order service and one restaurant service. When the order service receive an order, it immediately publish an event to the restaurant service using Kafka as a messaging channel. The restaurant service then consume that event from the Kafka and prepare the food and send a notification to the end user. In this scenario, these two microservices communicate with each other, but the order service does not need to wait for a response from the restaurant service. This is why it is called asynchronous communication between the microservices, right? So this event driven architecture is useful for inter microservice communication. But what if we want to implement events within a single microservices, or you can say, what if I want to implement the events for inter-application communication? I mean, I just want to event within the order service, or I just want to implement the events for restaurant service. Then how we can achieve that? That is where these Spring events came into the picture. Okay. So using this Spring event mechanism, you can publish the event within inside the application. Okay, don't worry, I'll give you an example to make it easier to understand. So let's consider another use case. I am working on a healthcare project where I just want to design a feature called patient discharge. So if you think practically, before discharge a patient, what all action or what all activity we usually perform? Okay, let's list down couple of key points. Then we'll try to understand how Spring events help us to solve this problem. Now to discharge a patient, first we need to finalize the patient bill. Then once we finalize the patient bill, then we need to update the patient medical records or history. Correct? Now once we update that, then also we need to assign that room to the next patient. Fine. So if all are done, then we need to send a discharge notification to the patient and all the relevant medical staff. Okay. So these are the steps or action we need to perform to just implement discharge patient feature. Now if you observe, I have four different kind of action. So for billing, I will create a billing service. To update the patient records, I will create a record service. Similarly, I will create for cleanup and assign the room to the new patient, I will create a service called housekeeping service. And for notification, I will create notification service. Now if you will design this theory into the code, it will something look like this, right? I have a discharge service and I have a method called discharge. Inside that, I am just invoking each and every services and their methods, right? So this looks good. Then what is the problem with this particular approach? Let's discuss those problems one by one. Okay. So the first problem is tight coupling. If you observe, this discharge service is tightly coupled with all other services: billing service, record service, notification and housekeeping service. This means any change in the API or behavior of these services could require changes in the discharge service. Okay, so this is one of the key problem if you'll go with this particular approach. Now let's discuss the second problem, that is difficult to extend. So adding a new service to handle additional tasks upon patient discharge would require changes to the discharge service directly. Okay, this is another problem which violate the open close principle of solid design pattern. Okay, now the third drawback is testing and maintenance. Testing becomes more challenging because we need to mock or stub multiple services and their dependency. It also increases the maintenance overhead since the discharge logic is not modular, because we club everything in a single class, which is not modular. Fine. Now next drawback is lack of async process. So if you observe, all service calls are executed in a synchronous manner, or you can say in a sequence way. If any service takes a long time to execute, it can delay the entire discharge method. Okay, so for example, let's say billing service is taking more time to execute, then this update medical record, notify, cleanup, these methods will not execute until it completed the billing service method. Okay, so this is one of the drawback, that we are not making it async, rather we are going with the synchronous flow. Okay, so we have, these are the drawbacks if you follow this particular architecture. Now then, how we can make it better? So to do that, let's remove this service dependency and make our implementation loose coupling. Now you might ask me, hey, if we remove the service dependency, then how can we perform these operation like billing operation, notification operation, update the medical record? How can we do that? Because from the discharge method, or because from the discharge service, we are not pointing them to execute. Then how my code will work, right? That is what the challenging task. So to solve this kind of problem, we have the Spring events. So what we will do, we'll simply publish the discharge event from the discharge method. Now whoever service want to use that event, they can simply listen to that event and process their task accordingly. So if you observe here, discharge method act as a publisher who publish the events, and all other services who listen to that event will be act as my listener. So what we are doing here, rather than invoke the service by tightly coupled them with my discharge service, rather I simply publish an event from the discharge service. Now whoever service want to execute, or whoever service want to take that event and process, they can simply listen to that event and execute their job. Okay, so in this way we can design our application better using Spring events mechanism to avoid the discussed problem like tight coupling, difficult to extend, testing and maintenance, and lack of async process. Okay, so we need to play with the events to make our application loose coupling and to design it more efficient. Fine. So let's do a hands-on example to understand the same scenario in action using Spring events. So without any further delay, let's get started. So let's go to our IntelliJ IDEA. I have created the skeleton with the same scenario what we have discussed in the presentation. Now let's begin with the pom.xml. If you observe here, we are using the latest version of Spring Boot, which is 3.3.0, and we only added the web dependency and Lombok dependency. Okay, there are no additional dependency added in this project. Let's close it. Now to deal with the different service, billing, housekeeping, medical record, notification, I have created different services. Okay, you can see here. Now I have defined a controller class with one endpoint to process the patient discharge, and this is the post mapping. You can see here, this is the what request I am sending from the postman. Correct. Now if you observe here, from this controller I call the patient discharge service. If you go here, you can see, right, this is the patient discharge service, and it tightly coupled with all other services: billing service, medical record service, housekeeping, and notification service. Now if you observe, in the discharge patient method, we are invoking each and every services. Okay, this is what the tightly coupling approach. And we also understand there are a couple of drawbacks, like if you observe here, it's difficult to extend testing and maintenance and lack of async process. So that is what is the problem in this approach. Now what do you understand? If you understand here, from this discharge method, rather than invoking the service, just publish an event. Okay, so try to picturize this particular image on your mind so that it will help you to design your Spring event based implementation. Okay, so rather than invoke the services from this discharge method, what we want to do, we want to publish a event. So go to the code, just remove this stop because you don't want this tight coupling approach. Just comment it for now. Here also I will just remove it. Fine. Now then, from this discharge patient method, how can I perform this activity, billing, medical, notification and housekeeping? So just publish an event so that these services, billing, medical, housekeeping and notification, that is what we have defined in the handler package, they will listen to that event and they will process accordingly. Okay, now what is the first step? Publish an event. So to publish an event, first I need to create a event which is kind of generic, right? So what I'll do, I'll create another package, event, then simply create a class, Java class. I'll name it patient discharge event. Now to play with the Spring event, saying that okay, this is what the event class I created, you need to extend that from application event. Okay, once you extend it from application event, it will ask you to define the constructor. So in this particular patient discharge event, I also want to, as part of this particular event, I also want to populate the patient ID and patient name. So just define those two fields. Then just pass them as part of constructor. Then initialize it. Fine. Now also define the data annotation. If you don't, okay, if you will define the data annotation, it will expect a default constructor. So define getter and setter. Fine. Now this is what the event will be published to other services. Okay, I'm going to publish this patient discharge event. Now whoever service want to perform the task, just consume that or just listen to that event and do your logic or execute your logic. Okay, so this is the event, right? So we have created this event. If you understand the presentation, we have created the first step, that is event. Now next we need to publish that event, right? So how we can publish that? From this discharge service, if you go to the discharge service code, to publish the event from a service, we can use the class application event publisher. That class is provided by the Spring framework. So what you can do, I can use the class private application event publisher, then just inject it. Fine. Now using this event publisher, we can publish this patient discharge event. Now whoever the service want to use that, they can simply listen to that event and process the logic. So it's straightforward. Okay, so what you can do, go to the discharge service. We know need this approach, let it be. Now what I want to do here, I want to publish that event publisher dot publish the event. Can you see here? And publish the event application event. So if you observe here, this event we extend from application event, correct? So just pass it here, new patient discharge event. source is nothing your current object, and give the patient ID and patient name, because these two value we have defined in our constructor. So let me format it. So if you observe, we just publish the patient discharge event. Now, how these services, billing service, housekeeping, medical record, notification service will listen to that event? It's straightforward. Go to that particular class, then simply there is a annotation. First of all, you need to tell them which event they want to consume. So in your application, you might have 10 event, right? So this billing service handler, which event he want to consume. So just pass that event name. Okay, patient discharge event. Then how can he consume that event or listen to that event? So there is an annotation called event listener. Okay, like in Kafka we have Kafka listener. In other RabbitMQ or ActiveMQ we have the corresponding listener. Similarly for Spring event you can use @event listener annotation, and you can specify which events you want to listen in this particular method. Fine. So just add it. I mean just modify the sysout statement. Wheel for patient, patient ID. Now same way we need to configure in other service to listen to that particular event. So go to the other services, go to the medical record service. Let me zoom this for you. Then just define patient discharge event. You can define any variable name, fine, that's fine. Okay, cool. Now here you need to annotate @event listener. Then here also let me map the patient ID. Similarly, just go to the other service, housekeeping service. Just annotate here @event listener, patient discharge event. Preparing for next patient after discharge of, give the patient name. Fine. Now go to the last one, notification service. Here also define which type of event this method will listen to. Patient discharge event. Just annotate @event listener. So the approach is same. Whether you have a single service who want to listen or 100 service who want to listen, just annotate and specify which event you want to listen in this particular method. Okay. Now just here sending discharge notification for patient, just add some meaningful statement. Okay. So I will just add event.get patient name. That's it. So I believe we are good. Now if you go to the presentation, from this discharge service we publish the event using application event publisher. Then we have, these are the services who listen to that event using @event listener annotation, right? This is what we have implemented to just demonstrate Spring events mechanism. Now we are good. Let's run our app and we'll see the result. Okay, just go to the IntelliJ, go to your main class, simply run it. So you can see here it started on port 8080, all good. Let me clear this. Now I just need to trigger this endpoint, right? Discharge-API, then process, and I need to give this request. So I have that payload in Postman. So just let me send the request. Click on send. So we got the messages. Now if you'll see here, can you see here? We have not invoked the billing service manually. We have commented out, or I believe we have removed it. Go to the discharge service. See here, we have commented it, right? But still The event is getting published to whom? Billing service, and billing service logic is getting printed here. Can you see here? Finalizing billing for patient this, then housekeeping service, preparing room for the next patient after discharge of this particular user, medical record service, notification service. Can you see here? So I have added two log statement. Patient discharge process initiated. Then these are the event published to these services. They executed the next. Then at the end we got the last statement. I mean the patient discharge process completed. But if you observe here, see here, the first initiate statement, then finish statement. Inside that it is getting executed. I mean wherever it publishes the event, those corresponding services are executing their logic. But if you observe here, still we didn't achieve the async flow. By default, this event listener will not give you option to make it async. So what it will does, see here. If you see here, let me zoom this. Yeah. Now here, event listener are by default synchronous in Spring Boot or Spring Framework. The publish event, this particular event method blocks until all listener have finished processing the event. Okay, so that's what we observe in the statement, right? This publish event method will block till all its listener is executed. Okay, but that is not the solution we want, right? That's fine. We are performing the event driven architecture within the same application using Spring Event. But I want to make it async. How can I do that? That's very simple because you already aware about how to play with async or how you can make a API async using Spring Async annotation, right? So that is the simple statement. You can just add it to make it async. So what we can do? Just go to the listener class or your other services, simply just annotate here async, and also you need to enable async. Now in billing service we have defined, right, this annotation to validate whether it really those events are getting executed in different thread or not. What I'll do, I'll just add a statement. I'll just print the current thread dot current thread dot get name. Fine, let me copy this, go to other services. Let's go to the housekeeping and just annotate here, or you can add here also async. Then just change the statement here. I just want to validate that all my listener is being executed in different thread. That is what my main intention to achieve the async. Okay. Now go to the medical record service handler. Just annotate here at the rate async, and I will just append the messages. I mean the thread name. Then the last one, notification service, make it async. So now this will not be synchronous, rather it will be async. Okay, so let's verify that. Let me rerun our app. So it started. Now let me clear this. Go to the postman and let me send the request again. Now if you see here, see here. First, the log statement, discharge process initiated for the user. Then billing service, housekeeping, medical record. Then you find the last statement of your discharge process completed. Then your listener. See the flow of execution. It's random, right? It's not a synchronous. This is the listener 1, listener 2, listener 3. Then you find log statement from your code. Then again it executing the fourth listener. Okay, so if you observe here, this is what your thread name, task 1, task 2, task 3, task 4. So the thread is created with this particular name. The reason, by default Spring uses simple async task executor for executing the task in async mode. which create a new thread with this name, task 1, 2, 3, 4. Now if I'll rerun again, the thread name will be like 5, 6, 7, 8 like that. Okay, let's see that. Let's run it again. Now see here the order of execution. Billing service execute in different thread, task 5. Housekeeping medical notification is executing in different thread. And now if you see here, you find the log statement, then in asynchronously it execute these events or the listener, then you find the log statement. Now let me rerun it. See, this task is being picked by 13, 14, 6 and 13. So the moral here I am trying to convince that each listener task will be executed in a different thread if you will run it in a async mode. But if you will run it in a synchronously, then it all will be run in a single thread. Okay. So, but the main thing we understand that how we can play with the Spring events. Okay. Rather than hard code the services in patient discharge service like this, we simply publish the event and all our listener listen to that event and they execute their job. Okay, so this way we can avoid all the issue we have discussed like tight coupling, difficult to extend, testing and maintenance, and we can achieve the asynchronous flow using this Spring events mechanism. Okay, so again this will be helpful for intra-service communication. Okay, if you have two different application or two different system or two different microservice, then you can go for the Kafka because that will be inter microservice communication. But if you want to play with the event within an application, then you can happily use these Spring events, and I have already explained in details way how we can play with the events with different services. Okay, so I hope this will be helpful for you. Do let me know in a comment section if you guys have any doubts. That's all about this particular video, guys. Thanks for watching this video. Meet you soon with a new concept.